guys, it is Barack Lesnar of Barack Lesnar Hoops, and it has been a while since I've made a video. It's my first video of the 2021-2022 season on the most disappointing fantasy basketball channel on YouTube. If you're still watching, that means you're incredibly loyal, and I want you to know that I still very much treasure and appreciate you. And I hope this mock draft brings you some semblance of value. It is my very first mock draft I've done all year. Very unlike me, I start drafting months before the season. But unfortunately, I have a big boy job that has taken so much time and energy. It just has not been possible. But I found the eye of the storm, and I wanted to take some time to make a quick video and maybe a couple more before the season starts that I think could bring you value. I don't have any major goals of growing this channel to 1 million subscribers, so I'm more worried about, if you still watch, helping you out, because I appreciate you. And if you want to keep watching and subscribe for these updates, I appreciate you too. Either way, like that video by smashing the like button for me. So I drafted from the 7th spot, and this is the team that I put together. It's Kevin Durant, Fred VanVleet, Michael Porter Jr., John Collins, Malcolm Brogdon, Jared Allen, Jeremy Grant, Wendell Carter Jr., Nerlens Noel, Jordan Clarkson, Malik Beasley, Joe Harris, and Gary Trent Jr. I wish I had the projections to show you, but I do not. But this team ended up projected number 2 out of all 12 teams in the mock draft. And I've told you guys in the past, I really like going off of that projection. Not because it's a guarantee that's where you're going to end up, but because it's mathematically figuring out how well your team complements itself. And it really ends up being through that strategy of being really bad in one or two categories and just being elite in the rest of them. Kind of the opposite of a strategy that would work in a roto type of league, which is why I'm not the biggest fan of roto leagues. They have their value. I'm not the biggest fan, probably because I'm an idiot. So I started with Kevin Durant with my 7th pick, as I mentioned. And if you see who was picked after him, we see Joel Embiid, Damian Lillard, Jason Tatum, Paul George, and Anthony Davis. All of those would have been great picks at 7. Probably outside of Joel Embiid, most of them are going to be healthier. Jason Tatum wouldn't have been the worst pick there. Now that I'm looking back at it, if I could do it again, would I pick Jason Tatum over Kevin Durant? Possibly, only because he's going probably to sit less when they're both playing. I still think Kevin Durant is going to produce more, so it's going to come down to Kevin Durant's availability. But with Kyrie Irving's status up in the air for the season, Kevin Durant might have to step up and not have the ability to rest as much as they were planning or plan to. So in the second round, I drafted 6 in the second round, and I went with Fred VanVleet. So during that draft, looking back, I believe it was at 25th, LaMelo Ball was drafted. And looking back, I probably would have picked LaMelo Ball over Fred VanVleet. Still, though, I like Fred VanVleet as a pickup for the team for his ability to score. He can get you a good number of assists. He gets you good steals. He keeps the turnovers relatively low. And he's just a dynamic player, and he puts up some video game numbers on occasion. I'm a big fan of his. He has the potential to produce in that top 10, top 15. So huge fan of his. After that, I drafted Michael Porter Jr. because I really liked his fit with Kevin Durant. They both help your percentages. They're both going to score. They're both going to get you a trickle of steals and blocks. They're not going to get you a ton of assists. Michael Porter Jr. less so, but he just signed a $200 million contract, and you can bet that Denver wants a return on their investment. So I think the times where they've held back on him, I think that's part of the past, and we're going to see him produce at a high level. So I drafted him pretty high up there, but overall I liked his fit with the team I'm putting together. At that point, I had no centers yet, and John Collins fell to me around I think he was 42, and great fit with what I want to do, because get you high field goal percentage, high free throw percentage, get you blocks, Doesn't help me with my assists, but at this point I'm really punching assists, and I end up punching assists and ended up being really bad at assists. Steals I ended up being not strong in, but I could have been worse, and I'm within shot of being towards the top half of the league with some changes. John Collins at 42, I thought that was an amazing pickup. Miles Turner was another great option that I could have gone with, but I do think John Collins has more scoring ability, has more three-point shooting ability, even though Miles Turner has higher block potential. I also think John Collins is the better rebounder, and we've heard a lot about Clint Capella having that foot issue, so that could limit his playing time, and we could see John Collins benefit from that. Tobias Harris, another great pickup. Big fan of him around that 45 spot, just because he blends so well in many different areas. He reminds me a lot of Michael Porter Jr., just with less upside. And if they get rid of Ben Simmons, he's going to have the ball in his hands more, which means more production. He's a guy that really doesn't hurt you in any specific area. He's not elite in any specific area, but he really truly helps you across the board. All right, then I went with Malcolm Brogdon in round 5. I was looking at Jonas Valanciunas, but he did not make it back to me. Then I looked at Jaren Jackson Jr. He did not make it back to me. At that point, Malcolm Brogdon made a whole lot of sense to me. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I know he ended up ranking really high because he scored close to 20 points. His percentages were nice. He started getting a trickle of steals. He was getting consistent assists. He keeps his turnovers, even though they've crept up with his usage, he still keeps them relatively low. So he reminds me a lot of Tobias Harris as a point guard, and I thought he'd be a great fit with the team I'm putting together, especially in the 5th round. So Malcolm Brogdon, Darius Garland, another decent pickup around that area. A lot of uncertainty around Ben Simmons, but if you want to take that gamble that he finds a place where he gets playing time, probably not the worst idea to consider him there. Even at his best, though, he's very flawed in that he doesn't get you any threes and he hurts your free throw percentage. A really bad combination for a point guard. In round 6, I identified, man, if I want to be competitive in blocks, which I do, because steals is probably not going to happen for me, I need to focus on some shot blockers. And then Jared Allen, he was just glaring at me. He's been a top fantasy player for years now, and he just got paid, and he's on a Cleveland team where he's no longer coming off of the bench. They're going all in on him as their center of the future, which bodes very well for his ability to help your fantasy team. He's going to get high field goal percentage. He's going to get you a ton of blocks. He's going to keep the turnovers low. His free throw percentage is average, which for a shot blocking big man, I'll take it. He's not going to get a ton of threes, but who knows if that's a wrinkle he adds. Either way, even without the threes, I thought he was a great pickup for me here. Somebody else I had an eye on in case Jared Allen fell through was Mikhail Bridges, because Mikhail Bridges is one of the best glue players in fantasy basketball, in my opinion, in that he helps both of your percentages at an elite level. He's going to get you threes at an elite level. He's going to get you steals at an elite level. He keeps the turnovers low, gets a ton of threes. Such a great player. And he's undervalued because he doesn't put up flashy scoring numbers, or he doesn't put up flashy assist numbers, and people overvalue points and assists so much. With this build, I'm normally 9 times out of 10, if I'm going to punt a category, it's going to be assists. And guess what? 9 times out of 10, I'm projected to have the lowest turnovers while being strong in all the other categories that I'm targeting. So people who focus on assists tend to ignore turnovers, so they lose turnovers every week. And then when they're missing games, they end up losing assist as well. Me, I'm losing assist every week, but even though I'm losing assist every week, if I'm missing games from my guys, guess what? My turnovers are lower. So I'm even more competitive in that turnover category. I was already going to lose assists regardless. So you have to keep that in mind. The percentages, field goal percentage, free throw percentage, as well as turnovers, they're not as impacted by volume or games played as the volume stats. And those are the stats people tend to ignore. So if you understand, it doesn't make sense. The majority of people play in a way that doesn't make sense. So the moment you start playing in a way that makes sense, you see your results increase significantly. Like a lot of you who have been watching my channel for years, if you've improved significantly implementing my strategies, please comment below. All right, so in round 7, based on what I've told you, I couldn't get Mikhail Bridges, but guess who I got? I got Jeremy Grant. Jeremy Grant, last year we saw him scoring at a 20-point per game clip. He can get rebounds, he can get steals, he can get blocks, he hits 3-pointers, and we saw him improve his free throw percentage, which was huge. He's still on a Detroit team that's rebuilding, and he's going to have a lot of opportunity and playing time. So to draft him in round 7 with the rest of the guys that I have, I'm still getting that boost to my shot blocking with him while keeping my 3 strong. Really nice get for me right here. And if you see other nice options around there, Robert Covington, Buddy Hield. I'm going to say no to Buddy Hield because he doesn't get you steals and blocks. And there's guys you could get later like Joe Harris, and I'll show you that later, that are going to get you as many threes as he does. Maybe not score as much, but Buddy Hield, I would rather go with Jeremy Grant just because of the steals and blocks. PJ Washington, another guy who gets you nice steals, blocks, and threes numbers. While also being center eligible, there's a lot of value in that. Miles Bridges, another decent player around that area, reminds me a lot of Tobias Harris. I think he could put up Tobias Harris like numbers, and you could draft him pretty late. All right, so in round 8, that's where I went with Wendell Carter Jr. So looking at everybody drafted around him, I'm very fine with that pick. Andrew Wiggins, not a fan of him even without the actually I think he got vaccinated, so there should be no uncertainty about his status as far as playing due to the vaccine status. Mike Conley, even though he had a really good season last year, he's still old, and I just don't like aging point guards. Even Chris Paul, who's one of my favorite players, I tend to stay away from aging point guards. Mitchell Robinson, with that foot injury, I guess if you want to take a swing at it for his potential to get you shot blocking, I wouldn't though. There's players you can get later on that I think have just as much potential, if not more. Wendell Carter Jr., I picked him because I think he has a very big possibility of starting and getting significant minutes on an Orlando Magic team that traded away Nikola Vucevic to get him. So the opportunity for him to produce is there. I think he has the opportunity to be a very dynamic player. I think he has all-star potential. We haven't seen him live up to it, but we have seen flashes of it. I think he's being really slept on, so I picked him round 8. Jonathan Isaac, some uncertainty around his vaccine status, so I felt that that would help Wendell Carter Jr.'s value as well. And this is why I'm avoiding Mitchell Robinson. I got Nerlens Noel in round 9, who I think is going to end up being the better player. He got paid. He's not as injury prone. And I told you guys last year, the coach loves him. He loves what he brings defensively. It's exactly what that team needed. And the team did really well. I said last year this Knicks team would do well, and they did very well. He was a very underrated part of that, but I knew he would contribute in that way, and he contributes in that same way to your fantasy basketball team. It's not flashy production, but it helps. High field goal percentage. His free throw percentage, he's boosted it over the years. He's not going to get you threes. He's not going to score. He's not going to get you assists, but he keeps turnovers low, plus steals, plus blocks, plus. Okay, if you want volume stats, I focus on steals and blocks and ideally rebounds. Okay, and then I try to be competitive in points. I want to be top 5 at worst in points. I want to be top 4 in 3-pointers made at worst. Rebounds, I want to be top 5, top 6 at worst. Assist, I'm okay with being the worst. Steals, I want to be, if I'm going to be in the bottom half, I want to be in the higher end of the bottom half. That makes sense, with where a few changes I can get into that top 4 to 5 spot. Blocks, I like being in the top 2 to 3. Okay. Turnovers, I like being in the top 2 to 3. That build works for me the best. So then just find players that fit that build. It's really simple. Jordan Clarkson in round 10. This guy gets underrated every single year, and every single year he kills it. He seems to get better. He doesn't help with steals and blocks, but because I've drafted other players that do, I'm going to benefit from his insane amount of threes. I'm going to benefit from his scoring. I'm going to benefit from his really high free throw percentage. He's going to hurt my field goal percentage, but I have so many high field goal percentage guys like KD, Michael Porter Jr., Malcolm Brogdon. I've accounted for that so I can bring Jordan Clarkson on. And since I'm punting assist, he's the perfect point guard for that sort of build. And look who else is going. This guy drafted, and keep in mind this was a mock, but LaMarcus Aldridge, Tyler Hero, Mo Bamba, Andre Drummond. Not sure how he's going to produce when they have Joel Embiid out there. DeAnthony Melton. If you see the guys being picked, Jordan Clarkson did much better than all of these guys. So Jordan Clarkson's a major sleeper right now as far as the rankings. Round 11, I went with Malik Beasley. Very similar production to what you get from Jordan Clarkson. So pairing both of them, again, not going to help me with assists, but they're going to help my steals. They're going to help my threes. They're going to help my scoring. And they keep their turnovers relatively low since they don't really pass all that much. So great fit on my team. Jae'Sean Tate is a player that I like from Houston. I had my eye on him, but I was worried about his percentages. Thaddeus Young has the opportunity to perform on that Spurs team on round 11, so I'd keep an eye on him because he performed very well. And with DeMar DeRozan gone, he's probably going to have some usage. Joe Harris is who I picked in round 12, and I thought that was the perfect pickup. Like I mentioned before, why go for someone like Buddy Hield when I could go for Joe Harris with the uncertainty surrounding Kyrie Irving, with Kevin Durant probably going to be resting. If Kevin Durant does rest certain games, then I have Joe Harris who's going to step up in his potential, and I can offset some from missing Kevin Durant. Does that make sense? So it's like a contingency for the fact that Kevin Durant will sit, which helps my team overall. Of course, he's not going to replace KD's production, but if he gets the ball in his hands and he hits a couple extra threes that week, if Kevin Durant is missing, that helps my team overall. And he tends to be a really high field goal percentage player when he's hitting his three-pointers. I love that combination of really high field goal percentage while having elite three-point production. He's one of the best shooters, and I really liked picking him up there and seeing who else is around. Who else would I have picked up? Terrence Mann, possibly. He produced well while Kawhi was injured, and Kawhi won't be playing for this season from the looks of it, so he could definitely help you. So Nadave's team ended up really strong. We could go and actually look at his pickups. I won't give a full breakdown, but he drafted a strong team. He started with Nikola Jokic, drafted from 1. Then he had Zach LaVine, another strong fit, helps your percentages, has threes. Turnover prone, which fits in with what he's doing. If you have Jokic, you probably don't want to assist. You don't want to punt assist, so then it makes sense to punt turnovers in that situation. Then he went with LaMelo Ball, another player that's a really nice fit, that across the board production. So now he has 3 strong players to build off of, and he did a really good job building off of them. Tyrese Halliburton, great player right there. He's going pretty high now, but I went with John Collins. Actually, I went with John Collins and he went with Clint Capella. So we both went with big men. Clint Capella reminds me a lot of my pick later on, where I picked Jared Allen. So we picked very similar players, if you're noticing. All right, so he went with Clint Capella there. And then he went with Jonas Valanciunas, who was a player that I was actually eyeing. So he went with 2 big men back to back. Then he went with Kyle Lowry. So as you see, I went with a point guard. He went with a big man. Then the following round, I went with a big man. He went with a point guard. Very similar strategies we're putting together, if you're noticing. Then he went with Kevin Porter Jr., which I think is a very strong pick. He's going to have a ton of usage on that Houston team. I still prefer my Jeremy Grant pick. I think it's a safer pick. He went with Harrison Barnes, who had a pretty decent season last season. I'm still not his biggest fan, but he was very similar to a Tobias Harris type player in that he just helped you across the board. And if I sound more nasally than usual, I apologize. Allergies are killing me right now. So Nerlens Noel. That's why I went with round 9. He went with Norman Powell. Norman Powell is a very strong pickup. He's going to have the opportunity to score, hit a ton of threes. He's not going to be a steals and blocks sort of guy, but he does help your percentages. So I really like that pickup for him there. His one flaw, he only had 3 centers and only 3 power forward eligible players. So his team is not very balanced. I had at least 4 of every single category. And that's the best strategy, to have a very balanced team, because even if you miss one of your centers, you still have 3 solid centers. When he misses a center, he's down to 2. If he's down to 2, if he's missing 2, he's down to 1 center. If I'm missing 2, I still have 2 centers. So that's my worst case scenario. My worst case scenario happens for him a lot quicker, and big men are so valuable. All right, so then he went with Kelden Johnson, a very strong pickup with the San Antonio Spurs, one of those glue guys that helps you across the board. Anthony Melton, another similar point guard who can get you steals, blocks, and hits 3-pointers. So this guy knows what he's doing. And then Terrence Mann is who he ended up finishing with. So very solid team by him. He ended up finishing projected number 1 in the mock draft. I ended up projected number 2. And based on what I remember, and I did record this, but the audio was muted because I'm dumb. But he was projected to win 5 categories. I was projected to win 4, but points was a difference of 300 points. So we're talking margin of error stuff right here. So very likely that his team and my team would be in the finals. This is who I would worry about. This is who I would keep my eye on when I'm making moves. I'd keep an eye on how can I make sure I have contingencies in place to beat him. And the way to do that is make sure I'm stronger. I know now I want to beat him in points. Okay, there's certain areas I'm not going to compete in, but points, we're so close together. I want to make sure I'm keeping an eye on my points. And I'm making sure he's not getting too many points. And that's the best way to win. You have to care as much about their team as you care about your team, in that you're keeping a tab on what they're doing to beat you, so that you have plans ready for what they have ready for you. And the best way I found, if they want to load up on points, I'm gonna let them beat me at points usually, but not in this situation, just because of the breakdown. But usually a lot of people focus on points, so they ignore turnovers, percentages. He didn't do that, so I have to focus on points because he has a sound strategy. So I have to account for him stronger than the person who had no strategy. I say that to say this: be one of the people with a strategy. I dropped a lot of nuggets for you, and that'll help you not only in fantasy basketball, but in life. So the very last picks for both of us, he picked Tyrese Maxey, another smart pick. Tyrese Maxey has a huge opportunity now that Ben Simmons is very likely to be traded or sit for the majority of the season. Based on what we're seeing, he's refusing to play, so we've probably seen the last of him with the 76ers. Tyrese Maxey with his last pick, very smart. Gary Trent Jr., I think that's a smart pickup for me. He's going to have a ton of usage on that team. He's going to hit a ton of threes. We've seen him score at a very high level. Pairing him along with Joe Harris really gives me a huge boost to my threes, okay, to finish off with. He has some steals potential, and we haven't really seen how good he can be, and I think he's in the perfect environment for him to produce. He's no longer playing with Damian Lillard. He's no longer playing with CJ McCollum. He's on a team where he can be one of the top scoring options. So to pick him with my very last pick, he is a huge sleeper in my opinion. Kelly Oubre, another decent pick there at the end. Kevin Huerter, I think we're going to see a leap from him. He's somebody else I would strongly consider with one of those last round picks. Jamal Murray, if you're banking on him coming back and you can throw him in the IR, I think you could do a lot worse than picking him with your last pick as a lottery ticket for later on. But all right, guys, that is my team. Like I said, ended up projected number 2. And it's a team I think would have a very strong season. So considering this is my very first mock draft and I've done very little research, I'm very happy with this team. I don't know enough about the rookies, so I stayed away with them. Stayed away from them right now anyways. I prefer to watch from a distance and then leap on the waiver wire, because a lot of people, when those rookies start struggling at the beginning, tend to drop them or tend to trade them for cheap. I will monitor how they do in preseason, and if I see anyone really stands out, I will change my projections. But for right now, I'm very happy with my team. If you see, my team skews very young. The only old player I really have is Kevin Durant. The rest of my players are relatively young. And I do that because I already am accounting for Kevin Durant missing games. So I want to minimize the games my players are going to miss. And it's just a known fact, the younger you are, the more resistant your body is to injuries, to wear and tear, versus being older. The odds are you're going to miss more time with injuries. Doesn't always work out that way, but in a game like this where you can't control all the elements, the most you can do is stack the odds in your favor. All right, so I've gone for 26 minutes, but I think this video will be useful to you. If it is, smash that like button. Feel free to subscribe. I'm probably not going to shoehorn myself to only fantasy basketball, so keep that in mind moving forward. Either way, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for watching. I will have a sleepers video coming soon. Take care.